Good afternoon. This is Roger Thunderhands with the Red Road. I did a previous video on the phenomena that is appearing in the skies, or let's say the recent phenomenon that is appearing in the skies on the East Coast, on the West Coast, over in the UK, around military bases, massive sightings of, let's call them, unidentified flying objects. My last video, I said I would do a deep dive on this. So you should probably check out my last video before you watch this one, but you don't necessarily have to do that because I'll probably cover most of the stuff I covered in my last video. Only this time I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. My last video was basically to allay fears, and I presented three different options as to what these sightings could be. Now, my first option in the last video was that it was some type of psychological or dark operation to try to convince the people, or let's say maybe not even try to convince the people, just present certain anomalies or certain sightings or certain craft to make the people notice that something is going on in the skies. Of course, there's things going on in the skies. Have been for millennium, have been since the ancient days of the Sumerian culture, all the way through until now. Now, the latest press briefing of this man called Kirby, who seems to want to represent the government or is representing the government. And then we have Mayorkas, Department of Homeland Security, Department of State, Secretary of State, all these different people are coming out and trying to explain away what people are seeing. So one of the things, you have to be very alert, very lucid thinking, very clear thinking, have a grasp on history, have a grasp on the Star Nation, have a grasp on all kinds of, let's say, philosophical, spiritual, and wisdom teachings to understand this stuff. But if you want to break it down into the machinations of what the government will do to put fear in people or to complete an agenda, again, you have to think lucidly and use common sense. So the people that are coming out, their narrative for all these people in New Jersey and New York and Connecticut and all along the East Coast and some on the West Coast and all these people that are all of a sudden seeing things, they're trying to say and explain it away with the notion that, well, these things are aircraft, manned aircraft. These things are drones. They include all of it. They're drones, they're commercial drones, they're people with these little play drones, they're people that just have been doing this all along. All right. So there's been aircraft all along. Granted, there have been things in the sky all along. There have been drones in the sky all along. There have been all these things that they're saying in the sky all along. And that's what people are seeing. Now, my question to them is, Well, haven't these things been there before the beginning of this, let's say, panic or mass hysteria, or let's say, I don't even like putting those words out there because those are the kind of words they want to put out there, obviously. I've seen it several places, Wall Street Journal, all kinds of periodicals, using the word panic and using the word hysteria and things like that. My question to you is, if these things have been there all along and these things have been happening all along in the airplanes and the drones and all this stuff, why is it now that people are just seeing them? Why haven't they seen them before? Why is it that since the middle of November, this has been something that people are noticing? Didn't they notice this before? Haven't they been on the planet long before this, watching and, you know, going about their business? What all of a sudden decided or made people decide to all of a sudden look up in the sky and spot things? Well, maybe because they weren't flying that low or something triggered this, all right? So for them to say that, you know, this is what you're seeing, they're not explaining the fact that why are you seeing it now, or why are you just noticing it now if these planes and aircraft. I can't drive that point home enough. Let's look at what the mainstream media in the government is presenting to us. What they are presenting to us is, let's think about UAPs, let's think about UFOs, let's think about, they don't call them UFOs. It's not proper to call them UFOs now. It's, the term now is UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, I guess is what they want you to do now, or that's the word they want you to use. This has been ramping up for at least the last 3 years. And then they wonder why people might wonder what these things are. Well, they have been putting out the narrative for at least the last 3 years, maybe even before then. It's been more prevalent in the last 3 years that there are these UAPs, and they came out with the TikTok videos of the pilots. Incidentally, I am a pilot, a fully rated pilot, instrument rating, commercial rating, multi-engine rating, flight instructor rating for half a decade. They put out information, or have been putting out information, like these congressional hearings from the Pentagon and the supposed whistleblowers that are telling us that, oh, yeah, these things are real. We just don't know what they are. What are they saying now? They're saying the same thing. They're saying we don't know what they are. But now they have shifted the narrative to, well, what people are seeing is just the everyday occurrence of life, and they're looking up in the sky and they're seeing things. Now, I can understand how somebody could look up in the sky and see something. And if there is a barrage of, let's say, news information, where did all this originate from? Where was the first person that cited anything in New Jersey? Who is that person? Let's trace it back. Do we know how this all started? Do we know where the first sighting, when this supposed hysteria started? Why did people first notice this? Who were the first people that noticed it? Now, as to the question of why, I mean, like I said, they've been ramping this up. There were people like Pentagon people I think the guy's name is Alfonso Alessandro or somebody of that nature. He appeared on Tucker Carlson several times when Tucker was on the Fox News network. He appeared all over the news and even appeared before Congress and Senate hearings and all this stuff, as did other whistleblowers. The point I'm trying to make here is in the past 3 years, they've been talking about this more and more and more. This was never talked about before. This was always, oh, if if you see UFOs or if you see anything in the sky, you are a uh, tin hat conspiracy theorist or aluminum foil hat, whatever terms they want to put on it. Incidentally, the word conspiracy came from the CIA after the JFK assassination. And there was question about the official narrative, the Warren Commission narrative. And so, in order to stifle any questions that might fall outside the official narrative, they labeled this conspiracy theorists. It's a conspiracy, man. In other words, these people that use the word conspiracy are labeling the people that have different ideas about possible conspiracies or possible agendas or possible involvement of the government or whatever. They're all of a sudden, with this one word, conspiracy theorists, branded nut jobs. Oh, you're just a nut job. In other words, people that try to figure things out or try to make sense of certain things and come up with certain conclusions and are thinking lucidly and maybe even strategically and maybe even spiritually, they're all of a sudden, these people are nut jobs. They have ramped this thing up from the very beginning, and this is the kind of the culmination of the ramping up. Where is this going? Are they setting us up for some type of major event? Well, it would seem that way. And if something happens that's major, that is surrounding this whole thing, well, you know why. These are called false flag operations or dark operations or psychological operations. And I mentioned in my last video that these operations are instituted to exert some kind of fear over the population. And we get back to that old formula that's been used over and over again. Problem, reaction, solution. We present a problem, we create a false flag, we create hysteria, we create panic, just like at 9/11. And we have our answer for that. And the answer with 9/11 was institute more legislation, create new departments that never existed before, like the Department of Homeland Security, pass bills and create new laws like the Patriot Act that in the final wash take away all your personal rights as established by the Constitution, even infringing on the right to free speech and the right to say certain things and the right to the Fourth Amendment of not being invaded, your personal property or space or anything like that. That all went out the window with things like the Patriot Act and the Department of Homeland Security and the war on terrorism, which 9/11 kicked off the war on terrorism, which instituted the need for all these different programs. These programs were instituted to control people. Mind control, psychological operations, fear, all of these things were instituted for that purpose. More control by the government. Let us be your savior because you don't know what's going on and we know what's going on, and we'll take the helm here and make sure that everybody is safe, when it's just quite the opposite. Psychological operations are very well known in the military and in the, let's say, if you check out the unconventional warfare manual that is used by the military to overthrow other governments and other countries and destabilize them, you have all the same earmarks. You have control of the media, the narrative. You go in, you take over the radio stations in these countries, you control the narrative, and you spin your own narrative. That is what is happening with the mainstream media right now. You have story after story after story. They're all parroting the same thing. They're all sensationalizing. They're all putting out words like panic and people are at the breaking point, and they have actually orchestrated this to where people are starting to panic and are starting to feel like they're crazy, because basically, isn't that what the government is saying? Oh, you're just crazy. You're just seeing things. These things have always been there. The planes have always been there. The drones have always been there. Now, you have all kinds of videos out there. And then on YouTube, as soon as this thing started happening, you had everybody and his brother with all these, independent guys that are trying to make bucks off the internet jumping on this bandwagon. So you got a plethora of videos showing up, and you have all kinds of things that you have to try to sort out. Is that a real video? Is this? Is this that? There have been sightings of UFOs for decades and decades. This has been going way back since there were cameras. So you have to ask yourself why this is all arising at this time. And you also have to look at the timing of things. Is this a distraction to get your mind off another event, or is this a planned op to ramp up your, let's say, your fear or your expectations, ramp up your expectations so that you can the government can segue into a false alien invasion. Now let's take that word alien. That has negative connotations. The Native Americans, or the natives of this land, the indigenous people, my ancestors, have talked about this and believed in this, and have made prophecy about this for a long, long time. This is nothing new to the indigenous people of this land. But I'll get to that in a minute. So what was my second option as far as what this aerial activity could be? Well, we have the second option as being some kind of foreign involvement, foreign nation, China. Oh, they're bringing up the China balloon again, the weather balloon that flew over, and I covered that in previous videos. They're bringing up all kinds of things. out of the woodwork, okay, and to make people think that maybe possibly it could be an Iranian mothership and the Chinese are at it again, and this could be a very deep operation by the Chinese government to survey our land and our military sites, and then you have all kinds of things popping up out of nowhere, like on Reddit, that blow, that take off, and people start talking about. So the next thing that came up is, let's say, these ships are out there, they're drones, and they're our own government, and they're looking for nuclear materials or a dirty bomb or a this or a that. Another false narrative, another narrative that makes no sense at all if you start looking into it. You have to just wonder right off the top of your head, as, let's say, one of normal American walking around thinking that, well, this is the United States and we have NORAD, we have early warning systems, and we have tons of missiles, and we have silos, and we have the Coast Guard and the Navy and the Air Force. Well, they certainly can protect us. But then all that goes out the window when people start questioning, well, where are they? Why isn't somebody doing about something about all these UFO sightings or drone sighting? That's another thing. Everything is a drone. No, it's not a drone. And in my last video, I showed a picture of a TR-3B triangular aircraft, probably formulated or worked out through reverse engineering, coming from places like Groom Lake and Area 51 and places like that. These flying triangles have been seen for years up high. I remember when there was the first incident of being able to spot it, flew in right over the California coast where I used to live. These things operate off a propulsion system of mercury and nuclear fission. These things have been in development since World War II and probably were an offspring of the Nazi uh, scientists that were incidentally flown over here after World War II and started our space program. People like Werner von Braun and it was actually had a name called Operation Paperclip. If you really know history, if you really go back and not only look at the history of the planet and the history of indigenous people and the history of, let's say, UFOs and the history of government operations concerning UFOs, and people like Boeing and others that are part of the military industrial complex, you could see that this stuff has been around a long time. Government agency, Project Blue Book, I think it was. Project Blue Beam was another one. The government has always had its fingers in the UFO phenomenon. They have always been taking part in it some way, somehow. At times, they tried to stifle information and label people nut jobs, sci-fi freaks, and stuff like that. And at other times, much credibility was given to certain things, but they have always tried to distort truth. Or they may take truth and twist it to their advantage. Again, to control the thinking of the multitudes, to cause fear, to cause panic, or even wonder. Now let's jump to the third option, which is what this video really is all about. And I said, I just had to do a little intro there of the three options that I presented in my last video. But now we're going to do a deep dive, and I'm doing this as an indigenous wisdom keeper. And medicine man, or whatever you want label you want to put in the tradition. I like the term wisdom keeper because there's no real charge about that. And what do I mean when I say wisdom keeper? What do I mean by that? What do I mean by, let's say, being an elder or a wisdom keeper of the indigenous nation? It means that we're here to shed light. We're here to shed light and truth on a situation that has people confused, and maybe even land another higher frequency, higher consciousness viewpoint. Let me start off with this. Now, I have a huge library, and I've been into this stuff for years and years and years, so I don't expect people that are unfamiliar with the indigenous people of this land and their customs and their ways and their mythology and their belief systems. And that's why I have the red road, because I am here to give you wisdom and history, true history, and agendas with the European man against the Indian. I am here to educate you or expose you to that realm. So again, I have a huge library on this stuff. I am an award-winning author. I have written for all kinds of periodicals, online magazines, in the indigenous community. I try to pull the covers on BS. I try to present truth. I try to go to a higher level of consciousness. So let's just dive into this a minute. One of the books I have, and there's 2 volumes, covers this very well, and it's by a woman named Nancy Redstar. And she wrote this book. Let's see if I can get a real good picture of it here. Nancy Redstar, Star Ancestors. This is volume 1. This is a very, let's say, not much known about book. People aren't buying this off the shelves. Now, in this book, you have all kinds of illustrations and interviews with wisdom keepers, people that are involved in the indigenous nation. And there's all kinds of information in here about Hopi prophecy, Cherokee prophecy, Mayan prophecy. It's rich with illustrations. Okay. It's rich with illustrations. There's and pictures of these different elders and wisdom keepers of the indigenous nation. And every one of the stories in here goes into, I'm not here to push this book. Let me just say that right now. Every one of these stories in here is accompanied by photos, quotes from earlier times from the indigenous people, paintings, drawings. Here's another one that I like. That's Sitting Bull connecting with the cosmos. A lot of great artists in here, indigenous artists. There's people from the Cherokee Nation. Here's a black man from the Cherokee Nation. This book came out about 2010. I'm losing a little light here. There we go. This is just one, and they were way ahead of the game. They were way ahead of the game. What does this indicate? Military, aliens. Okay. 2010 this came out. What's that? 24 years ago. 14 years ago, excuse me. We got people in here that have come from all over, both full breed natives and half breed, and just people that have been in from all walks of life in the indigenous community, that have been around, that have been through. And some of these are actually ex-military. Take, for example, this photo is one of the wisdom keepers. This gentleman, and you could see it in his eyes that he definitely has the connection. This gentleman was a person that was in the military in Vietnam. He went through all kinds of bad situations. He was completely unaware of his roots, even though he was indigenous, and went off to Vietnam and fought in wars and got involved in the CIA and got involved in black operations and drug smuggling. And he even talks about how they sewed drugs into the bodies of the slain on the battlefield, and when they came back, they had somebody that took them out. And he goes into deep stuff about dark operations, and he was involved in it, and they had him on drugs. The man was finally came to his senses and realized certain things and completely changed his whole aura, his whole being, kind of like Lame Deer, seeker of visions, John Fire Lame Deer, who was kind of a bad boy, a naughty boy. And you'll find that out a lot about people that are like sacred pipe carriers. And very revered in the indigenous community now. You'll find out that a lot of these pipe carriers went through very hard times and kind of were actually bad boys and did things that maybe they shouldn't have done because of the pressure of being on the reservation and the stuff they had to face and the trials and the tribulations and just horrific stuff they went through. Maybe being arrested several times, thrown in jail, trumped up charges. The indigenous elders that eventually became pipe carriers, of course, they weren't elders in the beginning. They had to go through the changes. They had to go through the lessons. They had to go through the teachings. They had to go through the ascension process. You ascend and you descend. But at some point, you have to realize what your calling and purpose is and take the bull by the horn, so to speak, or the pipe in your hands. So my point is that this stuff has been going on a long time. And I mentioned in my last video about the Hopi prophecy, because I'm deep into Hopi prophecy. Just for some reason, I made that connection, a calling, if you will, to know more about that. I even wrote a book, Emergence, which is part of the belief belief system, or let's say the knowing of those who are on that level. The Hopi people have always been a very, very advanced spiritual people. Why? Because they came from the Pueblo people, or the Anasazi, the original people of North America. And they speak of all kinds of things that correlate with what's going on now, as do other indigenous people, like, say, the Cherokee and the Lakota people. It's all from one source. And these people have been in alignment or in touch with the Star Nation for millennia, since they walked this North American continent, or whatever continent the indigenous ones are on, and they are all over the world. Actually, even the word shaman comes from Russia, in the Siberian parts of Siberia. Of course, that spread around and was readily accepted as being part of what we know as medicine men and people of that nature that have been around a long, long time, that cured on other levels, that presented their medicine. So my point in this is that they are in alignment with the stars. They have a connection and receive downloads in the form of, let's say, alerts or warnings or additional insight. And a lot of times this insight comes with an occurrence that may be happening on the planet or in a particular nation. It may come, these downloads may give you additional information. So what's happening right now, people? You've got unidentified craft all over the world. And these craft come in two types of, let's say, visual impressions. They come in the form of an orb, and they come in the form of flying craft. Now, when I think about orbs and flying craft, I'm thinking about technology and beyond technology, so to speak. Because with the orbs, this could very well be a dimensional thing making an appearance, or it could be from the Pleiades, the Star Brothers, the Pleiadians, which I associate myself with, have been around and have seeded this planet. And this happened a long, long time ago. So they know what's going on. Now, if these, let's say, elders, in Hopi, they have the word wuya, Wuya, wuya. This meant a star brother. They also have the word kachina, which is actually spirit beings that live on the mountains in and around Flagstaff, Arizona, another place I live. I was raised in Arizona. I was raised in the Southwest. I traveled all these grounds. I did tracking. And just being out in nature and sitting on the top of mountains and peaks as a boy and communing with the land. But these Kachinas live around the area of Flagstaff in the San Francisco Peaks. And the Hopi say that these are one of the four mountains that hold up the world. And if you ever took a drive at night out into the area of Monument Valley and like around Winslow, Arizona, and in that area where they have the painted desert and the petrified forest and meteor crater, the Star Nation influence is palpable. It's palpable. You go out there on a starry night and take a walk out on the mesas, or go to Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, or all these places that align themselves with the stars, you're going to find a concentration of energy there. You're going to find a bunch of portals there. You're going to find contact is much easier there, out of the clutterness of society. My point in this video is to make you aware that the term alien is not a term that is conducive to the understanding. Why? Because there's too much of a charge around it. There's too much of a, you see all these BS movies, through your life about, the man who made the earth stand still, and all these sci-fi things. And although that particular movie wasn't that bad because it was supposedly to be for a lesson for mankind, not to harm them, but there was always the threat. You see all these modern day movies, there's so many of them, about attacks from aliens, and the movie Alien, which makes these creatures look monstrous, and blood dripping out of their mouth and ready to tear people apart and all that type of thing. So that image has been propagated over the years to make aliens look like something to be absolutely horrible, bloodthirsty, killing, nasty. We're going to use you. We're going to take you over. We're going to control your earth. Another good movie with that. And incidentally, this is a good point that I wanted to make in this video. Back in the day, there was a man named Orson Welles. And he did a broadcast from, of all places, right exactly where this is happening now in New Jersey, same exact area, only this was back when, in the 1930s. Can't remember the exact date, but it sticks in my mind because even my father passed this information on to me when I was a kid. War of the Worlds. H.G. Wells, I think, was the originator, the writer of the book War of the Worlds. This broadcast by Orson Welles took place back in that time period, and it happened, I can't remember, it was a specific day, could have been around Christmas, I'm not sure. But he presented a broadcast over the air, and people are, in the 30s, they're sitting by their wood radios with the dials and all that stuff. And what happened back then was they figured, well, we're going to put on a little trick here, and we're going to put on a little play, and it's just going to be it'll be something that will just utterly be mind-blowing. Entertainment, they figured. This is going to be a form of entertainment for the people out there. And so They acted like it was a normal broadcast. We're breaking in on, to give you breaking news. Where does that sound familiar? And then they proceeded on with aliens have landed, and then they described every blow by blow, and they had sound effects, and they even had guys claiming to be reporters, and we're on the scene now, and they had screams in the background, and these things coming on tripod legs, aliens coming in, and when they did that broadcast, there were probably thousands and millions of people listening. I don't know what the population of the States was back then, it had to be in the millions, but they took it for real. Even guys on Wall Street and even rich magnates and all these different people figured this was real. They were in an utter state of panic. Some people even jumped off places like the Empire State Building, and people that had money, and they figured they were going to lose all their money because of this. And they were distraught, and scores of people committed suicide. All right. This happened in the same place that this is happening now. I want you to think about that, because in psychological operations, they tend to repeat things if they can, if they look back in history and they see something had success, they will either use that incident or they will repeat that incident so that they can have the same success. They use the same techniques: fear. Now, I'm not going to be judgmental on Orson Welles, although some people have had many, many questions about his background, and H.G. Wells and what their true intentions were, and in some of their writings, and who they were hooked up with at the time. So this is kind of like a carbon copy of the War of the Worlds. We got things coming in, and people are spotting things, and people are flipping out, and something has to be done about this. There's been multiple I've been on top of this. There's been multiple press conferences about this, something needs to be done. And here's another thing that they do. They introduce, like I mentioned earlier, they introduce new legislation. That's what's coming out of all these politicians' mouths right now. We got to have new legislation on drones. We got to have new legislation on this. We got to give the states, empower them more. We got to allow this and allow same exact thing as the Patriot Act and the Office of Homeland Security. The problem is when they say that they're going to do something for a certain situation, it has hidden agendas, and they pass a bill, and in that bill, they'll take away every one of your freaking rights. There's always a three-pronged approach with any black ops situation. They don't want to just cover one base. They want to cover 2 or 3 or 4. Now, this is what I see happening right now. This event didn't just come out of nowhere. People just didn't start all of a sudden one day looking up in the sky and saying we're seeing things. These things have been around for a long time. Planes, aircrafts, helicopter. What triggered this? What kicked it off? Be interesting to know. I haven't done a deep dive into like who was the first person that said they saw something in New Jersey. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? And are they people that are planted, crisis actors, government plants to get something going, get something stirred up? agents, underground agents, infiltrates protests and turn them into violence. Same thing. Now let's look at the Star Nation as to what they might think. And this is something that you really should pay attention to right now. The Star Nation has capabilities that are beyond anything that the mind can conceive as far as technology goes. And not only that, but if you do a deep dive into the spiritual aspect, or if you look into that, you find out that this is all on a very high frequency, high spiritual, for lack of, or supernatural would be a good word. Something that you can understand as the people on this earth. This is on a level that you cannot even comprehend unless you have been exposed to it through an indigenous source, or let's say a calling or a purpose. You will not know about any of this stuff. And the good thing about wisdom keepers is they don't, they have the dark and the light within them, and so they can see the dark and they can see the light. But also many wisdom keepers are in contact and have a energetic connection to that realm. Alternate realities, Castaneda. Alternate realities, medicine men, sitting bulls, the crazy horse. The list goes on and on and on. The elders, the Hopi elders on the Métis. This is really the Star Nation. It is a imprint or an energy pattern that is manifesting itself through what seems to be physical form. So when you get into this area, then you have insight and you have a purpose and you have an obligation to inform and warn and alert people to this type of situation we're seeing right now. And those wuya, or those indigenous ones that are a combination, because they know their DNA and they know about the star seeding and they know about what went on in ancient history back in Sumerian culture and off-planet incursions and DNA manipulation, things that the average Joe on the street is not going to think about or even know about or even be able to comprehend. Even talking about this kind of stuff will get you in trouble, because the powers on this planet don't want you to know this stuff. They want to be able to use trickery. The real Star Brothers, the real Star Nation, is not down with this stuff that they're doing. When you use a person that is on a very high level, or an entity or entities or Star Nation that is on a very high level, and you use them in an adverse way to wreak havoc on all my relations, we are all related. We are all connected through a matrix, and no, not the matrix that you see on movies, in movies. It's an energetic matrix. And when the indigenous people of this land say in the Lakota and others say, all my relations, that's exactly what they mean. And that includes the Star Brothers, the Star Nation. We're all one, if you get my drift. And some open the door to the top of their heads. Now we're going to go deeper here, okay? Because this is in the indigenous nation as well. Particularly the ones I know about are the Hopi, who know about all the energy centers on the body, the 7 chakras, and the crown chakra. And that is how Creator is talked to, through the crown chakra. Through the door to the, you have to open the door to the top of your head to receive energy and information and downloads. The Star Nation does not like what's going on right now. They do not like being impersonated. They do not like almost being made fun of. They are the ones that are in control, okay? They care. They care about humanity. They also care about how much distress they could even cause humanity with their revealing of themselves. If they were to appear tomorrow on the earth and walk in well, let's say, I won't say appear tomorrow on the earth. Let me correct that. If they were to reveal themselves as already having been on the earth for quite some time, they can shapeshift. They can become energy patterns. They can become people, or what you think is people. Or what you think of as people, the two-leggeds. They are walking and have been walking and have been here. But they have to be real careful because they realize the danger of coming down into this dimension, descending down into this dimension or this reality. Because there's people out there that want to harm people that are from the Star Nations. This has been going on. Why do you think the indigenous people of this land were slaughtered and genocided and put into concentration camps called reservations? So the real Star Nation is not real happy with being impersonated or made to look like the fall guy or the villain to scare people, to drive people into panic and into suicide and other things. This is not something that goes down well with those of us who know. We'll see what the outcome of this situation is. Don't forget, any kind of vehicle that is roaming around in space-time is an illusion as well, because everything is energy. Everything is energy. Our bodies are energy, the planet's energy, the dog across the street or next to you is energy, your Living room furniture is energy. It's just different vibrational energies. And if you're on a real high level, energy can be manipulated. Now, don't be naive and think that the powers to be don't know about this. But at some point, and this could be the point, at some point, they're going to cross what they call their red lines. Isn't that interesting? Red line, red man, indigenous man, people of the earth. Red line, they're going to cross the red line, which they have already a long time ago. So the word karma might fit this thing, building up over a period of time, is going to come back and bite them in the ass soon. The Star Brothers can appear to be anything. They can take over these vehicles. They could shapeshift into, let's say, one of these drones or one of these advanced technology vehicles that they think is advanced. They could take that over in a second. They could shapeshift right into it. If there's any crew in it or any electronics in it, it's toast, it's history. They may even appear, and I've seen some videos where orbs come in contact. Let's say I saw a thing in Arizona, which where I was raised. Isn't that interesting? Where a supposed drone, or let's say some type of military vehicle or some type of vehicle approached one of these orbs, and it was disposed of. It was plummeting to the ground in seconds. Let me mention something about a prediction here that came about through a man called Cliff High, who I've been following for years, because I seem to experience a certain resonance to what he was saying and how he was going about things. He predicted this December 4th. This was when all this stuff happened. It actually started happening on a slow basis around the 15th of November, ramped up to the point to where it was almost like Star Wars. He predicted this off of what he uses, and he is a very spiritual person. He predicted this off of a software program that he developed for the government or for Wall Street to try to anticipate trends in the market and that type of thing. Make a long story short, this software program was tapping into the collective consciousness of the people on the planet. By collective consciousness, I mean what everybody's thinking at the same time. We are all related, remember? All my relations. So it's like when one person gets an idea and then another person gets an idea and then another person gets an idea. Or let's say one person enforces an idea and then a bunch of people, masses, accept that idea and act in accordance with that idea, like let's say lockdowns. When they all start thinking in the same like herd mentality, that's what a collective consciousness is. So Cliff tapped into that through the computer by looking at what people were saying. linguistics, like neural linguistics and just linguistics. And through this program, he could see what was coming up because the collective consciousness was kind of going that way and going in that drift. And so his prediction was 39 days from the marker, and he has markers, he calls them markers, events, from the time that Trump was interviewed by Joe Rogan, 39 days after that. That was a marker. 39 days after that, December 3rd or 4th, he predicted that there would be all kinds of anomalies in the sky, and there would be drones, and there would be people firing at one another. Well, people are actually firing at the drones now, but these drones might be attacking other drones and things falling to Earth. On that very day, he predicted that it happened. And Cliff talks about, his spirituality too. So these things arise in the collective consciousness of mankind. And that collective consciousness, coming full circle here, is my first option of like, let's control the people and let's control their collective consciousness and let's steer them in whatever direction we want them to go. That's what could very well be happening here. And if my intuition or my downloads serve me, it doesn't matter what's going on, whether this is advanced military, psyop, psychological operation, or the Star Nation. The Star Nation takes precedent over anything that you see happening on this planet. The Star Nation has always affected the lives of the people on the planet. Unknowingly to the people on the planet. So when stuff like this arises, you have to look for the very, very, very highest purpose in here. That's why I said it, to remain calm. There could be all kinds of chaos swirling around you. Remain calm. There could be all kinds of narratives. There could be all kinds of lies and deceptions and traps and stuff that the normal man, because he doesn't know about mind control, he doesn't know about MK Ultra, he doesn't know about the past dark history of how dark people on this planet, through certain societies that have been taken over from, that were once good, have been taken over, how they can manipulate and use mankind in a sense of slavery and put them in a total hypnotic trance as to their actions as they go about their everyday life, their jobs, their routine, their family, their loved ones, their everyday normal activity is a trance. Induced from birth through social conditioning. You have to step outside of the trance, or let's say retrance, or go into another trance to pull yourself out of the trance. That's what medicine men do. The alternate reality. Shamans do it. Wisdom keepers do it. They have to pull themselves out of the everyday, mundane, hypnotic, trance-like motions that they're going through to see how that can be used to affect them very easily. A manipulation of the trance. Manipulation of the trance. Or a pulling them out of the trance long enough to scare the shit out of them. Excuse my French. It's like if somebody was to become instantly enlightened, as the yogis say enlightenment, or as the medicine men say alternate realities, or as if any of this woo-woo stuff people think is woo-woo stuff, all of a sudden they're in the woo-woo stuff, they're not going to be able to handle it. They can handle it. They're in flight and fright syndrome. Fright and flight, fright and flight, flight and fright, fright and flight, flight and fright. Let's get the hell out of Dodge. Where do we go? There's nowhere to go. Then panic ensues. And here's another interesting fact about this. It's around Christmas. Christ Mass, Christmas, Christianity, Savior. Now there's a whole bunch of people in, let's say, the UFO and the ufologist community that would look at this as like a good thing. They are somewhat aware as to what the Star Nation is all about. And they are also aware that man has made a complete mess of this planet. And so they have taken their belief system, some of them as like former Christians or whatever, and looking at JC as their savior, and all of a sudden jumped into, well, hell, maybe there isn't, maybe that belief system doesn't hold water, and maybe we need to go outside the realms of that religion and form another religion. You don't want to form, let me emphasize this, you don't want to form a religion as modeled after the type of religions on this earth that are misleading and have the savior complex, savior son, savior. The Star Brothers and the Star Nation have their own agenda, or let's say their own, I don't even like using the word agenda, their own plan. The creators have a master plan, let's put it that way. We don't know about it. We don't know what it is. We can only be directed to walk in a certain direction, as on the red road, which is used time and time, and that is the name of this channel, and that's why it is the name of this channel. Walking the red road, that road is truth. That road is honesty. That road is not a deceptive road. That road is honor and courage and the virtues of the indigenous people. That road is fortitude and compassion and love and understanding and knowledge and wisdom and right action and true leadership. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on. That's what the red road is. So I think probably this video is getting a little long, and most people have probably bailed ship by now because they're like going, this guy's woo-woo. He's out there. We can't understand this stuff. It's too deep. Let's get back to the mainstream media and the hype and the sensationalism We don't want any calm conversation. We want something that's thrilling. There's a reason for that old axiom or term: if it bleeds, it leads. The more sensational, the more blood you see, the more excitement we can generate. Let's put that at the head of the news cycle. Now, what will be interesting to see here, will this news cycle end? Will this news cycle end? And in about a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, doesn't take long, some other sensationalistic news story comes up, and the former one is put to rest and forgotten about and can't even be remembered. Oh, there were sightings of drones over New Jersey. That is the usual thing. So as a wisdom keeper, I have to watch carefully, because it doesn't matter if this thing goes away tomorrow or the next day. It's still been imprinted on your psyche. And here's another thing. I just keep getting these thoughts about how blatant lies are, how easily detectable they are by somebody who is thinking. Another narrative coming out of this as another thought: there's no harm to the public. They use words Orwellian style. They have double speak. There's no threat to the public. There's no harm being done to the public here. Really, really, the harm's already been done. When you tread on somebody's psyche, when you cause, let's say, panic, when you cause a mass psychosis, or let's say any event, let's say they have nothing to do with this. But if this event happened, for them to claim that it doesn't have an effect, there's no harm to the people, they're talking strictly on physical harm. Bombs aren't going to come raining down on you. You're safe. But they don't think, or maybe they do, about the psychological traumatic effect that this has on people. There's enough suicides over all kinds of things in the world, even the vets ramping up, young people that just can't handle the situation just in this new normal, that see a feudal future with all the wars and all the financial problems and all the killings and shootings and genocide over in Eastern countries. And people are seeing this and they're like, I can't take this. Some of them even burn themselves alive right on TV. People are already disturbed. So do you think for 1 minute that something like this is going to somehow not disturb people or allay fears when you tell them there's nothing to see here, move along? Move along, there's nothing to see here. You've already seen it, and it's imprinted on your mind, and it's caused you great stress and anxiety. And even though you may move on to the next news story, that's there. And will be there forever. I saw that. I know I saw it. And then they got you second guessing your own sanity. It's another insidious thing about this. Did I see that really? Maybe I didn't see what I saw. Maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe I'm going crazy. No harm here, people. No worries. Don't worry about a thing. There's no harm to your psyche. Really? That was the intention, wasn't it? That was the intention. Let's see what else we can do. Got all kinds of legislation coming in. That'll fix that. Again, like I said earlier, it's just another form of instituting more laws to take away your freedom. Timing. Christmas. Oh, the Christmas Savior. It's the Savior in another form. The aliens could come through and save our ass. Be still, be centered, be grounded. And the Taoists say, like I said in my last video, be still and let the world form around you. As within, so without. Change your consciousness. Don't become part of the collective. Don't become part of the herd mentality that gets swayed this way and that way, this way and that way. Ascend to a higher level of consciousness. Raise your consciousness, and at very least, use lucid thinking. I think I about covered everything that I wanted to elaborate on from my last video. Just want you to know that I love humanity and I love my brothers and sisters and the four-leggeds and the winged ones and the planet. And in Lakota, the planet is called Mother Earth or Unsi-Maka or Grandmother. And the sky is Grandfather, and the four winds, the four directions, all come into play here on a supernatural level that people don't pay attention to and don't connect to. That's your only savior, is connecting to this divine, immaculate consciousness energy that is a combination of the feminine and the masculine, propagating itself into energy patterns on the earth. That is the key. The key is the Shiva and the Shakti, the grandmother and the grandfather, the mother, father, and the spirit that moves in all things. Connect to it. Get out in nature. Don't watch the news anymore. Get away from it. Do things you enjoy. Spend time with your loved ones, your family, your friends. And the best friend that you could ever have is out in nature, because all the animals and the winged ones and the ones in the water and all that, and the dogs and the cats and just nature in general, that's where you want to reside. Get out of the rut. Pull yourself out of your daily routine for a minute. Quit watching the news. Quit paying attention to what so-called authorities say. Take back your own power that was given to you by Great Spirit. You are Great Spirit. You are in the imagination of Great Spirit. You are the grandmother and grandfather. That's what self-realization tells you. I'll leave it there today. I think I've rambled on enough, and I just figure I'll put this up on my Substack channel. I may not even go on YouTube. We'll see. But there's just so much BS on YouTube about this that you get lost in the fray. I'd rather stick to the people that know me and subscribe here and There is a certain network on Substack that knows there are informed, enlightened individuals on here. We tend to permeate different places that have less restrictions. Subscribe to the channel. And I hate saying that. Such a routine, rote thing here. Smash that like button, baby. All this BS you see out there. This channel is supported by viewers that watch it. And there's a way to do that through subscription. And I'm not asking that you do that because it's free too. Just get additional content if you do that. So anyway, I'll leave it there. This is Roger Thunder with the Red Road saying Wopila, which means thank you, and Aho Hachito Welo. It is good.